I have an annual tradition of working my way through the Oscar-nominated films and watching the Oscars, making it an event in some way or another. Frequently, it's a nice night to escape, dream, and celebrate. The nominations were officially announced just a couple days ago, and sure enough, I had some homework to do. Many of them were easy to predict, and I'd seen roughly 70%. However, there was one real shock: Emilia Perez. The film was eligible to enter 18 categories, and was officially nominated for 12 of them, and nominated twice in one category. In the 97-year history of the Oscars, no film has received 15 nominations. Only 3 have received 14, All About Eve, Titanic, and La La Land. So Emilia Perez ties with The Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring, Forrest Gump, and Oppenheimer. It is now one of the 15 most nominated films ever. This must be an incredible film. I mean, it won the Best Picture award at the Golden Globes, it won the jury prize at the Cannes Film Festival, and so many more. It quickly leapt to the top of my watch list, and I didn't even know what it was about. The IMDb listing describes it as, Emilia Perez follows 4 remarkable women in Mexico, each pursuing their own happiness. Cartel leader Emilia enlists Rita, an unappreciated lawyer, to fake her death so that she can finally live authentically as her true self. Okay, sounds cool. And the trailer clearly reveals it as musical. Let's check it out.
2 hours later.
What the actual God, where to even begin? The movie opens by introducing us to Rita Castro, a second-chair lawyer struggling to write an argument for the case she is working on. This case has nothing to do with the overall plot of the film. It merely establishes her as a lawyer and acknowledges that, even within the legal system, things don't always go the way that they should. Everything here could have been established with a slow pan across a desk during the opening credits, but instead we spend 10 minutes on it. She's then invited to meet outside the courthouse and consider a job offer. She launches into a musical number debating it, and finally decides. Outside, she is abducted by 2 men who slide a bag over her head and hustle her to an unmarked van. She is taken somewhere and introduced to Senor Del Monte, a brutal cartel leader. He has made illicit political connections, wiped out competitors, and brought unknown violence as needed to secure his position. He reveals that he wants to transition and has already begun the necessary hormone therapy. She is to help him navigate the process, including the necessary work to create his new identity. Already, the film is showing it really doesn't understand the transition process. After 2 years on estrogen, it is very unlikely that Senor Del Monte would be able to grow facial hair, let alone maintain a beard. Not to mention, he's married, and somehow spending 2 years with his wife, never revealing that he's developed in the chest area, would likely be impossible. Pursuant to the agreement, Rita buys a plane ticket to Bangkok to evaluate the facility she is considering. This is a really weird sequence narratively. There is an extended phone call with a travel agent, where Rita decides to flex the newfound money she's been promised, takes out a credit card and drops it. We zoom in on the credit card and are suddenly in Bangkok. Immediately we launch into this.
I'd like to know about sex change operation.
Men to woman, or woman to men, from penis to vagina. Mammoplasty,
yes.
Vaginoplasty,
Yes.
Rhinoplasty. Yes.
Immediately after the song, we pan across the city and Rita is in her apartment. There's no connection, just jarring jumps to the other side of the planet. Okay, I want to pause here for a second, and of all things, listen to Matt Stone and Trey Parker describe how they've kept South Park alive for so long, and the core is in the writing.
Our whole South Park writers' room, one whole wall is one of these. And we've got it split up into 3 acts.
We have different colored markers just like here too. Look at.
Yep.
We have that.
And I walk around with the markers like this, and we'll go, okay, we do a show about this.
This is
like,
basically our writer's room.
oh, okay, well somewhere, okay, this would be a funny scene if we had this.
True.
Each individual scene has to work as a kind of funny sketch. You don't want one scene that's just like, well, what was the point of that scene? We found out this really simple rule that maybe you guys have all heard before, but it took us a long time to learn it. But we can take these beats, which are basically the beats of your outline, and if the words and then belong between those beats, you're f***ed, basically. You got something pretty boring. What should happen between every beat that you've written down is either the word therefore or but, right? So what I'm saying is that you come up with an idea and it's like, okay, this happens, right? And then this happens. No, it should be this happens and therefore this happens. But this happens, therefore this happens. And that, as soon as we are able to, and literally sometimes we'll write it out to make sure we're doing it, we'll have our beats and we'll say, okay, this happened, but then this happens, and that affects this, and that does to that, and that's why you get a show that feels like, okay, this to that, to this to that, but this, here's the complication, to that. And there's so many scripts we read from new writers and things that we see.
God, I see movies.
And
you see movies that you're just watching, it's like, this happened, and then this happens, and then this happens. That's when you're in a movie just going, what the f am I watching this movie for? Just like, this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. That's not a movie, you know, that's not a story. Like Trey said, it's those two, but, because, therefore, that gives you the causation between each beat, and that makes that's a story.
Applying that same idea here, there is no cause and effect. She writes the legal argument, then she goes to court. Then she gets the phone call. Then she's abducted. Then she flies to Bangkok. It's just a rough sequence of events. Now, before you start arguing that all films are just a rough sequence of events, take a look at the scene from Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, a film that received the same number of Oscar nominations. They enter the mines of Moria and realize everyone is dead. Therefore, they quickly exit, planning to take another route. But they are attacked by a massive creature in the water. Therefore, they fight, trying to rescue the party member that was grabbed, but are overpowered. Therefore, they flee back into the mines, sealing the door, and forcing them to face the unknown dead inside. Cause and effect. Let's keep that in mind as we continue. Rita consults with a doctor, and another song happens.
My dough is not God's dough. Instead of having plastic surgery, he'd better change ID.
Changing the body changes society. Changing society changes the soul. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. Doctor, I've been a lawyer since I'm 24. Don't want to say what I'm doing this for. You better change your mind.
He agrees and is taken to the cartel with a bag on his head. There we meet Senor Del Monte's wife, Jessie, who doesn't know about the transition or why Rita is there at all. It's cool to see Selena challenging herself with this role, but by her own admission, her Spanish is pretty awful.
Well, you know, I'm not fluent in Spanish. I'm not as happy with what I feel like I could have done in Spanish, but overall, I hope that it doesn't hinder my performance, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. Perhaps I could have had more time with it, but I was full throttle and I wanted to be a part of this so badly, so it was a challenge for me.
So awful, in fact, that I could hear it. So she swaps to English in almost every scene without explanation.
¿Es cierto que nos va a sacar del país? Are we going back to the United States?
At least maybe make sure to cast people who are comfortable using the language. We see what seems to be a pretty idyllic family dynamic, until Rita reveals that she has made a plan to move them to Switzerland and establish their new identities. This again is fairly abrupt, adding up to little more than the family suddenly being dropped off on the other side of the planet. Nothing was explained to them, and Jessie definitely does not understand. But Del Monte has decided that being able to transition is the thing he needs to be happy, so he's let Rita take them away. His death is then faked, and we shift to the surgery being complete. Again, this has all the reality of a telenovela. Apparently, all the needed surgeries were done in the same procedure, including a facial reconstruction. So Del Monte is fully wrapped up in a modern cocoon, and the next time we see them, Senor Del Monte starts using the Emilia identity. At this point, I'll go ahead and swap over how I'm identifying her. We hard cut to a restaurant, and for some reason, Emilia has hunted down Rita. As they talk, she waits until Rita realizes, and then reveals that she wants her family back. Somehow, we are supposed to accept that she has shed all of her previous violence and criminal behavior. The transition was the only thing she needed to be her true self, and we should forgive everything that came before. Rita accepts and retrieves Emilia's family, introducing her as an aunt, given that the children have never met her. She's a little exuberant in her greeting. Personally, I would have been utterly freaked out. Nevertheless, they start to settle into their new home. After another song break, and it's, weird. I understand the director was going for a stylized operatic reality, but it just breaks the reality out of the setting, literally allowing her to walk from her room into a black stage stuffed with dancers. She ends it by calling her boyfriend and uttering this historic line. Rita and Emilia have gone to lunch, and there's an awkward attempt to include the concept of the disappeared, the tens of thousands of people that are still considered missing, victims of the cartel wars. It's a hard juxtaposition given that as a cartel leader, Emilia is personally responsible for countless people never going home, missing or dead. Emilia needs to either acknowledge her role or stay away from it. Back at home, Emilia checks on her kids, and there's one of the most cringe-worthy scenes I've seen in a while. Her son seems to recognize her scent and sings, This whole scene just made me wildly uncomfortable. We then see Emilia at first acknowledging the horror of the drug war, a war that she was at the head of at the start of the movie. Rather than actually do anything about it personally, Emilia sends Rita to work confronting the issue and trying to track down some missing people. There's a bizarre scene of her interviewing a series of prisoners who all tell her exactly what she's looking for. In prison, it's said that snitches get stitches. So it seems peculiar that everyone immediately gives her information. But then that's the least of this movie's worries, so I'll move on. Emilia founds a group to help track down the missing family members. This again feels manipulative, trying to get the audience to forget that she's trying to solve a problem that she massively contributed to. Back home, Jessie arrives with her boyfriend, and Emilia discovers she is dating. Despite the fact that Emilia has been lying to her for years, there's some clear tension. The next day, Emilia and Rita do some press and host a function to reach out to the community. The audience is full of politicians and ministers. Rita bursts into El Mal, the Oscar-nominated song, which does little more than introduce the corrupt people in the audience and the vile things that they have done. The whole scene ends rather abruptly, and Emilia is back at the foundation. There she meets Epifania, who is there because she's been told her husband was found. He was abusive, and Epifania is incredibly relieved to hear he is dead. Once business is complete, Epifania makes her way out, but Emilia stops her and invites her out. We see nothing of the relationship. Nothing is earned, but suddenly they're desperately in love and wake up in bed together. After Emilia sings about her love, we cut to a karaoke room where Jessie and her boyfriend sing the Oscar-nominated Mi Camino. This again feels overlong and out of place, but I understand the connection. Past that, the only scene in this movie that legitimately brought a smile to my face is this one here, as the maids race for their turn on the arcade game. Upstairs, Jessie reveals that she's going to marry Gustavo, take the kids, and leave. Emilia does not react well. After a quick fight, we find out that the brutal Narcos is still alive and well. Men are tasked to hunt down Gustavo and encourage him to leave town. When Jessie discovers this, she takes the kids and flees, but it happens off-screen. Okay, let's pause for another second. When I was studying screenwriting, one of the first things I learned was show, don't tell. Simply, it's going to be far more interesting for the audience to experience something than to simply be told the information. Otherwise, it can feel a little forced.
Katana, she's got my back. She can cut all you in half with one sword stroke, just like mowing the lawn.
So when taking the kids off screen and just telling us it happens, that's a pretty clear violation of the rule. But why does it matter? Imagine for a moment that Jessie and Gustavo had a scene where they acknowledged the danger of the situation. That Jessie had been waiting for her opening and had to rush to get the kids to pack and leave, all before Emilia returned home and discovered her. There could have been a sense of danger, a ticking clock countdown, the fraught emotions of the kids. Doesn't that sound far more compelling than...
No sé, señora, todo el mundo estaba durmiendo.
No dejaron ninguna nota.
But that would have made Emilia less sympathetic. But is she really sympathetic? A brutal kingpin, head of a cartel, guilty of years of gun running, drug dealing, and the incredible amount of violence that would have taken to reach and maintain that position? Emilia calls Rita, and Rita tries to keep her calm. Rita goes to the foundation and finds Epifania waiting. They chat for a minute, then the police arrive and tell Rita that Emilia has been kidnapped. But of course they didn't show it. The police rally, and during a busy moment, a boy slips through the office and deposits a package that is quickly revealed to contain some of Emilia's severed fingers. Really, there's only one possible logical explanation, as her identity as Emilia isn't even known to her ex-wife. The only logical culprit is Jessie herself. Sure enough, a call is made, and Gustavo reveals his involvement. Emilia takes a moment, and then calls someone that I don't remember. I'm not sure if we've seen Ponchis before, but it's clearly not law enforcement. Did she reach out to the cartel? They don't know anything about the transition, so I doubt it. Regardless, Rita takes her reinforcements and races to meet Gustavo. The ransom falls apart quickly, and it becomes a full-blown assault. In the middle of the gunfire, Emilia reveals her identity and serenades Jesse. The marriage was at an end. Jesse was getting married to someone else, and that person was likely the one that severed Emilia's fingers. The whole thing feels incredibly forced and out of character. No cause and effect, just random shit happening. A furious Gustavo hauls Emilia out, throws her in the trunk of the car, and together with Jesse violently drives away in an effort to escape. Realizing she needs to stop this, the two fight over the gun, and the car careens out of control and over a cliff. In the extended moment of quiet, I leaned over to the friend I was watching with and mockingly said, then the car blows up and the credits roll. It took us a moment to stop laughing. So, Rita goes to the now orphaned children and promises to care for them. The massive accounts of the cartel money are never really referenced. There's no trace of anyone else trying to take over the cartel or repercussions to their leader disappearing. We are left assuming that Rita now has control of the accounts and can buy her way into adopting the kids if necessary. And really, that's it. The town sings a song in the streets, but, you know, copyright. So that's Emilia Perez. That's the movie that the Oscars think is on par with Gone with the Wind and From Here to Eternity. So, does Emilia Perez actually deserve to win any awards?
¿Y con quién andas aquí? Habla, esta gente habla, pero ahora no van a that they can't put out inside. Hablemos de compasión.
Shoveling coal here in Philadelphia. I'm not for that. In order for my true nature to remain. Cousin. There's him.
Hello, very nice to meet you. I'd like to know about sex change operations.
You must tell me about this treatment at the clinic in Geneva.
Viniste por casualidad. Dime que viniste hasta aquí a matarme.
Come with me. What? To meet the wizard. Why couldn't you tell me this is your moment? I'm coming.
¿Cuál es la diferencia?
¿Y con quién andas aquí? Que fuera tan amada durante.
While this video began as an examination of the nominations overall, it quickly became a close-up on one of them, a film about the cartel war in Mexico, hated by Mexicans. About the journey of transitioning, hated by the trans community. Directed by a man who doesn't speak Spanish, refused to shoot the film in Mexico because it didn't really match what I had in my head, and refused to research the actual war or transitioning because I already know what I need to know. A film where the title character is a narcos, now legally classified as a terrorist, and we are supposed to root for them. A film that blatantly violates the core tenets of screenwriting, was a box office failure, and is generally reviled by the audience. If the Oscars give this abject failure of a film even a single statue, it is an insult to Mexico, an insult to the trans community, and an insult to you as the audience. We deserve better.